Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, devoid of much tangible political progress and stripped of hope that anything could really change, our politics has mostly collapsed into a competition of vibes. Crafty politicians, recognizing the angry populist moment, they've seized on the anti-establishment aesthetic, offering appealing contrarian vibes that substitute for an actual platform that really challenges economic elites, where if you can mutter a few magic mantras and get the right people to hate you, then you too can have your moment in the political sun. These fraudulists are seizing on a market opening. A large group of voters are disgusted, rightly so, with the two major parties and angry with an economy that has failed them for their whole lives. But actually delivering for those voters and standing up to the economic royalists, that is so hard. Embracing catchphrases is so easy. So after having absorbed the political lessons of Trump and burning the itch that both of them scratched, this election season has seen an explosion of candidates who know how to talk the populist talk without actually really walking the walk. I got 3 examples for you today of politicians left, right, and center that this description fits. First, let's start with the least successful and most clownish fraudulist effort. This comes courtesy of the folks at No Labels. Now, this is a billionaire-backed group that is planning a third-party run and seeking ballot access in all 50 states. Their website uses all the language of anti-establishment third-party efforts. They talk about the duopoly. They speak in vague terms about the common-sense majority. As we found out, though, in an interview earlier this week, they're very skittish when you actually ask them about their specific policy views. Just take a listen. Can you get specific about what your complaints specifically with Joe Biden are and how your theoretical candidate would reflect a different policy valence than what the Biden administration, which I view as very centrist and very moderate, which is you guys' brand, what they've put forward?
So this is something that we've been very clear about since the beginning, which is we are not doing this because of subjective judgment about how good or bad Biden is or a judgment about Trump. What we're doing is something that nobody else in the political system seems to be doing, which is actually just responding to what the public clearly wants. Now, they have obviously different reasons for not liking Trump right now or not liking Biden. But the one thing we can anchor in is that they want a better choice. And in our view, having the ballot, and in July, we're actually going to be putting out some ideas. What that's going to finally do for the first time in a long time is there's this huge common sense majority in this country that gets ignored, that both parties don't feel like they have to be accountable to.
It's no accident that No Labels actively avoids specific critiques of Biden or of Trump, preferring to live in the mushy language of common sense and unity. Because the billionaire-backed agenda that they actually support is wildly unpopular. We know that because we can see from their allies and from their track record where their commitments truly lie. No Labels favorite, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, she went to the mat to protect the private equity bonanza carried interest loophole. Another No Labels darling, Joe Manchin, he blocked tax hikes on the rich. Josh Gottheimer of the No Labels Allied Problem Solvers Caucus, he was ready to blow everything up to reinstate the SALT tax deduction for the rich. Their allies have been among the most slavishly devoted to protecting corporate interests and low taxes for the wealthy. Now, tellingly, No Labels complains about Republicans and Democrats being beholden to special interests, but then they refuse to disclose their own donors. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of confused about their 2024 tactics, but their goals are really clear. They want to use majoritarian rhetoric to Trojan horse in an agenda that is even more pro-corporate than what Biden or Trump would actually enact. The polar opposite of what the American people truly want. Next up, we've got the right-wing mode of fraudulism, which has been embraced by quite a few prominent figures, but is articulated in its most pristine form by Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, Vivek and DeSantis, among others, they've used the cloak of wokeness to posture as anti-corporate, while boosting what is truly a thoroughly corporate-friendly ideology. Just take a listen.
So in a nutshell, here's how it worked. Wall Street got in bed with a bunch of woke millennials. Together, they birthed woke capitalism. And of course, they put Occupy Wall Street up for adoption. You don't even know what that is anymore. That's the Wall Street edition. As it turns out, there's a really similar backroom deal playing out in the other coast, in Silicon Valley as well. And here's the way it works over there. Woke activists demand that big tech censors political views that they don't like. And in return, the left agrees to leave big tech's monopoly power intact. And again, it is working masterfully for both sides. That is how this new arranged marriage works. This is not a marriage of love. This is more like mutual prostitution, and it is working. And the net result is the rise of America's newest Leviathan, the woke industrial complex. It is no longer just Wall Street. It is no longer just Silicon Valley. It is the entirety of corporate America as we know it.
This is actually a pretty clever trick, which I talked about at greater length in an earlier monologue, breaking down Vivek's interview with Jordan Peterson. Basically, embrace anti-corporate language, but instead of looking to address their power grip on the nation through antitrust, getting money out of politics, boosting unions, and the like, you hit them on nothing more than their fake diversity and environmental virtue signaling. You can see this playing out right now with outrage over Target's meaningless pride displays or Bud Light's use of a trans influencer. Do you think these companies actually care one bit about LGBTQ allyship? Of course they don't. They just thought marketing to the queer community was a good money-making strategy. You're not putting even a tiny dent in their social and political power by fixating on their meaningless gestures. But it is a brilliant way to keep your big donors and still maintain your populist aesthetic. Now, Vivek has actually made a whole career out of opposing so-called ESG. He even launched his own fund to pressure companies into strictly pursuing short-term profit maximization without the fake liberal values. But if it needs to be spelled out, forcing companies to only maximize profit is not exactly the revolutionary stance they might want us to think it is. Vivek and his ilk posture like they're opposing capital, when in reality they're just demanding capital be as psychopathically committed to the bottom line as possible. Now, if your biggest beef with corporate America is a Pride Month display, your biggest problem with Wall Street is some diversity hires, and your biggest complaint about the military-industrial complex is some inclusion training, you have completely missed the point, and your phony critique challenges absolutely nothing. And that brings me to the weird world of the online left mode of faux populism as represented by RFK Jr. Now listen, on a personal level, I actually really like Bobby, and for what it's worth, he strikes me as truly sincere. But it's become increasingly clear we share very little in terms of a commitment to checking corporate power and restoring power to the working class. His approach, though, has been the most successful by far in finding appeal, I think because of his sincerity and because it contains a few truly anti-establishment positions, namely his stated desire to end military aid to Ukraine, to combat online censorship, and to challenge Big Pharma. But if you ask him any questions on economics, he will proudly tell you he is a, quote, radical free marketeer, and that is music to the ears of every Wall Street ghoul and corporate profiteer. He's not sure what the minimum wage should be, won't fight for Medicare for all, doesn't know what he thinks about UBI and a federal jobs guarantee, and he will signal verbal support for unions but hasn't laid out an actual plan to reverse decades of union density decline. No wonder his bid has received backing from a number of prominent billionaires. When Brianna Joy Gray recently asked about his support from those billionaires and whether he would accept corporate PAC money, RFK Jr. ended up sounding exactly like Nancy Pelosi, declaring that he's got to raise as much as possible, no matter the potential corruption.
I'm going to tell you this. I'm not allowed to coordinate with our super PACs, but I think, and Bernie was able to do, as you said, to raise a lot of money, and I think Obama was raised a lot of money, and that's what I'm going to focus on from small donors. But, if you're a super PAC, the law is just wrong in our country, but it's hard to, at some point, you have to say, okay, I'm going to play by the rules as they are given to us. I'm not going to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Even on RFK Jr.'s supposedly core anti-establishment positions, Bobby's opposition to the Ukraine war is not matched by a similar critique of U.S. empire. He's made some pretty eyebrow-raising comments about China, and notably upholds the pro-Israel line of every American president from both parties. And if he thinks that cutting the defense budget in any meaningful way will be any easier than, say, passing Medicare for all, he's really got another thing coming. On RFK Jr.'s life's work, which is raging against Big Pharma, correctly pointing out their corruption, but incorrectly pushing fact-free claims that vaccines cause autism, even on this core issue, he would keep the current disgusting system intact. When I asked about checking pharma through nationalizing the industry, or at least creating a public pharma option, he immediately rejected those solutions as contrary to his free market commitment. On censorship, Bobby seems to embrace the right-wing concept of fighting censorship by finding the correct billionaires to control platforms, and that strategy has utterly failed under Elon, rather than advocating for a more fundamental solution that would devolve content moderation to the people. So to sum up, based on what we've heard so far, under RFK Jr., billionaires keep their social media playthings, Big Pharma continues to pillage, and at least some of the most damaging and hypocritical aspects of the American war machine march on. Like Trump, however, the right people hate RFK, and so that's enough for many to love him without troubling themselves too much with the details. Although, to be honest, a lot of his online support is from the libertarian and nationalist right, so RFK Jr.'s comfort with billionaires and corporate power won't necessarily be a problem for them. As for the normie Democrats who are disgusted with Biden and enthused by the Kennedy name, too early to say how they're going to respond once they actually tune in to his pitch. So there you have it. Lots of billionaire-backed anti-establishment vibes this cycle, and my advice for you, for what it's worth, is to know what you believe in. Make sure you demand specifics, don't get distracted by surface-level critiques, and as always, follow the money. Any candidate or cause billionaires are lining up to support should be a pretty large red flag. Don't fall for the cheap and easy mental shortcut of just looking for who most triggers the libs. And I guess in a way, Sagar, it's like a victim of populism. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.